I'll jump to another one that it kind of builds on something that Robby said in his response, which is, whether Republican or Democrat, this is coming for you too. Yes, absolutely. But there's a flip side here, and I had a question on that from Yvonne. You're right. I've mentioned this in my Substack, I think, and also last week. The question here is, please talk about something Kristen has mentioned several times along the lines of being aware not to accept advantages that may come our way at a cost to others who are paying the price. Yes, this is actually this sense and sensibility is coming from research on my next book and research into systems of manipulation and control, into authoritarian systems, which is funny because the book is called Live, Laugh, Love. But a couple of years ago, it took a dark turn. So anyway, I spent a lot of time researching kind of how these high control systems work in churches, in parachurches, in small groups, and in governments. And what became very clear to me is they work through two mechanisms primarily, actually more than that, but I'll just talk about two. One is coercion, right? That's the stuff that we see. That's the boots on the ground. That's the masked, who knows who they are. That's the laws, or not even laws, executive orders, right? Being, handed down every other hour, it seems, right? And then in the punishments, right? And there's the threats. And we spend a lot of time thinking about those. But more powerful still in these systems are the rewards. The rewards for those who comply. The rewards for those who aren't being targeted. I mean, if you think about Germany in the 1930s, the late 30s and early 40s, what happened when Jews were kicked out of their homes? What happened to their wealth? What happened to their artwork? What happened to Jewish businesses? Who ended up with that? What happened when they were kicked out of their jobs as professors? When they lost their spots as students? Who filled those? A whole lot of people did. A whole lot of people stood to benefit who weren't being targeted. Now, were they complicit? Yeah, they were. Were they perpetrators? Yeah, I think so. And sometimes it's not quite that clear, but as people are paying the costs, as things are being taken away from people, as discipline and punishment are being meted out, some people escape that. Some people openly benefit from that. And I think many of us on this call might stand to benefit. At least in some circumstances. So I think that as we prepare ourselves for whatever lies ahead, one of the ways that we do that is paying attention to not just dodging the bullets, avoiding trouble, but also refusing to benefit from the price that other people are paying. What that looks like, I don't know. We don't know yet. But just keep an eye out for that.
Kristen, while we're on this topic and you're answering, there were a couple of questions about today's Substack that you did and the book that you recommended. Could you
Yes,
mention that?
I'd love to talk about that. Yes, I wrote a Substack today with a number of resources. Shout out to some of the really great material that Jamar's producing. I mean, I'm just in awe of what you're able to put out on a weekly basis. So if you aren't following Jamar, go see his material. That speaks very much to these issues and building this resilience and equipping us all. I gave a link to a workshop and podcast that Bishop Marianne Buddy is starting. You'll remember her from her sermon back in January. in which she challenged President Trump. Um, I included a number of different resources there, but I also mentioned this fabulous book. I actually was just texting my son during this call and asked him to go check our mailbox to see if this book has arrived, because it is releasing this week. It has not yet arrived, so I can't hold it up and show you. But the cover is on my Substack today that I published, and it's by Hannah Reichel. And Hannah is a professor at Princeton Theological Seminary. And the book is called For Such a Time as This. And it's an emergency devotional. Now, I was asked to endorse the book. And I at the time I was asked, was not taking any more endorsements. I'm declining all endorsements until I finish my own book at this point. But excuse me, their editor reached out and said, just take a look at this. It's kind of like Timothy Snyder's On Tyranny, but for Christians. And I was like, okay, you got me. I'll take a look. And I sat down, I read the book in one sitting. It is so, so good. So if you're here on this call, I can guarantee this book is for you. If you're struggling to know what to do, if you're wanting to prepare yourself spiritually, practically, this book is perfect. I was so, so impressed with it. So the book is For Such a Time as This. Hannah Reichel is the author, Reichel. And you can find all the information on my Substack and also on September 17th. So is that soon? Within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be hosting a webinar with Hannah, and we're going to be talking about the book, and it's going to be live. And we are encouraging as many of you as possible, not just to tune in, but here's another thing: bring some friends, grab some friends, grab some neighbors, family members, and say, hey, do you want to do this thing with me? Do you want to read this book together? Right? Sometimes those are the best ways to have a conversation, not direct, head on, I need to tell you something more. Let's look at this together. Do you want to join? I'll have some wine. I'll have some hors d'oeuvres, and let's do this thing together. So that's, I think, September 17. All the information is on my Substack, but I cannot recommend the book highly enough. I'm so grateful to Hannah for writing it.
Diana, did you see a question?
Yeah, I saw a thread of questions that I thought were really interesting. Several people said, well, what about the church? You know, can you think of a moment in history when the church has really stood up to fascism and authoritarianism? Or what can the church do to resist XYZ? I would like to underscore something super important, is that, first of all, the church as a category should not really ever exist in anybody's mind, because the church is not one thing. Even if you're a Roman Catholic, that's not really the case. The church is not one thing. The church is many things. And if you're looking for examples in history of when an institution that was a religious institution that was close to the state actually had enough courage to resist political movements that they benefited from, financially or otherwise, all I can say is good luck to you, because that is not going to happen. It really hasn't happened. I was thinking back in my mind, when has the church resisted authoritarianism? And if a church is close to a government, if a church is close to an economic system, if an institutional church is close to any kind of power center, it will not stand up against abuses within that system unless it is forced by the people in its own pews to do so. That is just absent from the historical record, with that sort of exception. Now, what isn't absent from the historical record are all the people who were the troublemakers in church history, who pressed the institutions to do that very thing that I'm just talking about. They either went outside of the institutions and started other kinds of movements that would speak an alternative Christianity over and against the power center, or they risked everything within any kind of institutional power, prestige, or whatever they had. They risked it all in order to try to witness to the institution itself and pressure the institution towards change. And so there's really only two options here for Christians. You got to get together with like-minded Christians who already get what the problem is and who already understand the abuses of authority and who are willing to stand up against those things. And you might have to form some sort of alternate kind of way of being in communication with each other, or empowering one another, supporting, encouraging one another. I think that's one of the things we actually are trying to do a little bit of here. The other thing is, if you are within an institution and you have some sort of power, this is your time to spend it. And that's we're seeing some
Cash in the chips. That's right. This is the time.
This is time. If you have ever wanted to risk your job, your career, your health insurance, any of those things for something that was right and that would make a difference historically, hello, welcome to the fight. And you might say, well, hey, look like what's happening in the Episcopal Church with Marianne Buddy. She's like standing up. Well, I was just with a group of Episcopalians in a southern state a few weeks ago, and they were having Marianne Buddy's behind for dinner. They were Episcopalians, and they actually hated everything that was coming from her and from the presiding bishop's office and from the social justice ministries in the Episcopal Church. And they were saying things like, I literally was laughing because they didn't know me that well. You know, they're like having my friends for dinner, cutting them up on plates in front of me. And so, but they were just doing it. This is why we hate the Episcopal Church. I'm not going to give my money anymore if they keep up with this stuff. Don't they understand that Donald Trump is the best thing that's ever happened for America? It was amazing. And so you're seeing, if you watch our shows or read our Substacks, you're seeing those few really brave people who are actually cashing in the chips within their own denominations. Now, they do happen to have a lot of power within those denominations, and that's fantastic. And they are leveraging it in ways that I admire. And I have praised them personally as my friends for doing it. Honestly, it mostly surprises me. And I'm happy to be surprised. And so yeah, that's it. The church is not one thing. And if you're a Christian, you're the church. And so what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to pressure whatever institution you're in to have a backbone. And that comes from the pews or its pulpits or its government offices. And if you're not willing to do that, I don't know what else to say.
So Diana, I'm here, as I said, in London. I've been editing and trying to finish this book, and I was working on a section today about the church, and I'm going to share a little bit of it because it's right on the money, right from your piece. So hot off the press, but it's like a paragraph. So bear with me, but it's exactly what you're saying, Diane. I was struggling with the exact same thoughts about, like, what is the church? What can we expect from the church? What can we expect from Christianity? And basically, this is kind of where this is where I kind of ended up with on this. So I was kind of thinking about my kind of early thoughts about the church. And I was thinking about Baldwin, James Baldwin, who, when he was asked about hope and all that, he basically said, "I know we can be better than we are," was kind of his sum of his wisdom. But then I wrote this. I said, "But to be better, we'll need to stop thinking that our salvation will come from some external source." When I was younger, I kept looking to the Bible or theology or the church as things that would guide us into the beloved community, or at least keep us from each other's throats. But if white Christians in the age of Trump have confirmed anything, is that these religious resources are infinitely malleable. They are powerless to protect us from ourselves. In the end, all we have is our humanity and a sense of responsibility for each other. We must shoulder the terrifying realization that we are the only ones who can determine whether the tools in our hands are swords or plowshares. We ultimately decide whether these implements will be used for violence or peace, alienation or community, hate or love. Christianity, or for that matter, Islam or Judaism or Zoroastrianism, becomes in every generation what we allow it to be. If we want it to help us kill in the name of a plundering empire, it will oblige. If we want it to assist in caring for the widow and the orphan, it is amenable to that too. But it is we and not the Bible or the church who will determine which Christianity and which America becomes reality in the world.
Amen. That's exactly it. You are the church. It's the same thing that my Methodist Sunday school teacher taught me in 3rd grade. If you want the church to behave differently, you got to do it. And even if it's lonely or what have you, it's not going to change by any institution that's close to that power. The institutions are going to hold on to power as long as they can, and they will compromise as much as possible. And if anything, we should have learned over the last 7 months by watching what's going on with the Trump administration, it should be exactly that. Look at who's capitulated. Look at the institutions that have given in. Most of them. It's the rare ones that stand up. And so that's what we have to do. And thank you so much, Robby. That's a great quote.
Okay, Robby, I just have to ask, is that literally your first draft? Is that how the words go from your head to the page?
Oh no, that's like draft number 12 or something.
Okay, thank you. Because I was just gonna like throw in the towel here.
No. Like
It is
this
beautiful.
is in struggle. Yeah.
It was beautiful.